The clatter of the spoon against the ceramic bowl was the only sound in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator a distant drone. I watched Natalie, her eyes half closed, pushing around the granola in her yogurt. She'd always been a morning person, bright and bubbly, ready to face the day. Lately, though, her mornings were like this, a muted version of herself. We were ships passing in the night, sharing a space but not a connection. This morning, however, was going to be different. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pressed play on my phone, the tiny speaker on the counter crackling to life. The recording was short, only a few seconds, but it was enough. The sound of Natalie's breath, heavy and rhythmic, followed by the unmistakable whisper, "Liam. Not my love, not honey, not even a mumbled word of affection for me. Just that name. Liam, her colleague from the office. The one with the insincere smile and the predatory eyes that always seemed to linger too long on my wife." Natalie's spoon stopped moving midair, her eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on the phone. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking ashen, like a ghost suddenly called back from the other side. A tiny tremor started in her hands, which she quickly clasped together in a vain attempt to hide her distress. The silence hung heavy between us, thick and suffocating, broken only by the low hum of the fridge. She finally found her voice, a mere whisper that was so different from the usual assertive tone. What was that?" I leaned back in my chair, my posture deliberately casual, masking the turmoil churning within me. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I had loved, trusted, and planned a future with now revealed to be a liar. "Oh, that," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. "That's you last night, whispering in your sleep. Or should I say, dreaming aloud." Her mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. She looked like a cornered animal, frantic, her eyes darting around, searching for a way out. The bright, bubbly Natalie was gone, replaced by a frightened, guilty woman. You recorded me?" she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a hint of anger now, a desperate attempt to redirect the blame. I nodded, a small, tight smile playing on my lips. "I've been recording my sleep for the past few weeks," I lied smoothly. Apparently, sleep talking can be quite revealing. The truth was, I'd only started doing it 2 nights ago after finding a string of suggestive messages on her work computer. Messages she thought were safe in her deleted files. It was a desperate move, a gamble I'd hoped I wouldn't need to take, but it had paid off. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her hand rising to her throat in a gesture I'd always found endearing. Before, it just made me feel sick. "Don't play dumb, Natalie. We both know what that is, and we both know who Liam is." I watched her flinch at his name, and the small satisfaction was bitter on my tongue. It's just a name," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Is it?" I asked, the sarcasm now dripping from my tone. "A name you whisper in your sleep with such tenderness? A name you don't utter when I'm next to you?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the linoleum, the sound sharp in the quiet room. I walked to the counter, leaned against it, folding my arms, and looked at her intently. "You know, I had this picture of our life, a future we were building. Apparently, you were building something else entirely." She started to cry, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." But her apology felt empty, hollow. It was a reflex, a calculated move to elicit my pity, to manipulate me into forgiving her. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. "Save it," I said coldly. "The tears, the apologies. I've had enough. I'm done." I could see the shock register in her eyes, a realization that this wasn't going to be a fight she could win. I was done playing her game. I packed a bag, ignoring her pleas, her desperate attempts to hold me back. I was numb, disconnected from the chaos she'd created. I left the house, the door slamming shut behind me, the sound echoing the finality of our relationship. I spent the next week in a haze of anger and pain, crashing on a friend's couch. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The image of her whispering that name haunted my every waking moment. But amidst the grief, a cold resolve was growing within me. This wasn't going to end with me simply walking away. I was going to make them both pay. I started by digging. I used my own access as her husband to get into her work computer. I gathered the emails, the chats, the digital breadcrumbs of their affair. I printed them out, a thick stack of evidence that showcased her lies and deceit. Then I found Liam's social media, his life meticulously curated to project an image of success. I found the address of his apartment, the expensive car he drove, everything he flaunted to impress people like my wife. The day I decided to act was a Tuesday, a day like any other for them. I drove to his apartment complex, parked a few streets away, and waited. I saw her car pull into the parking lot, the familiar lines a bitter reminder of our past. I watched as she walked to the entrance, Liam appearing to meet her, a smug smile on his face. I waited until they were both inside. Then I walked to his apartment door and knocked. He opened it, a confused look on his face, his eyes widening when he saw me. I didn't give him a chance to finish. I pushed past him, my fist connecting with his jaw with a sickening crunch. He staggered back, his hand flying to his face. Before he could recover, I grabbed him by the shirt, throwing him onto the couch with a thud. You think you can just waltz into someone else's life and steal their wife? I roared, my voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. Natalie stood frozen in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. I ignored her, my focus solely on Liam. I pulled him up again, slamming him against the wall. He was scrambling, trying to defend himself, but I was too angry, too fueled by the betrayal that had ripped through my life. I unleashed everything, every ounce of pain, every shred of fury. He was a pathetic excuse for a man, flailing and whimpering as I continued my attack. I didn't stop until he was curled on the floor, moaning, blood trickling down his face. Then I turned to Natalie, her face streaked with tears, her hands trembling. I threw the stack of printouts at her feet. These are for you, I said, my voice cold and hard. I've got copies for everyone at your office, for your parents, for everyone you've ever known. You wanted to play this game in secret? Let's see how you like it out in the open. The look on her face was priceless. She had destroyed my life, and now hers was about to come crashing down too. I watched as she scrambled for the papers. Liam remained a huddled, whimpering mess on the floor. I left them there in their mess, the silence in the room broken only by Natalie's sobs and Liam's pained breaths. I walked out of the apartment, the satisfaction a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I knew that this was just the beginning of the fallout, that their lives were going to be irrevocably changed. But I didn't care. They had broken me, and now I had broken them. It was cold. It was calculated. And it was what they deserved. I left town the next morning, drove away from everything, unsure where I was going but knowing I could not stay where everything reminded me of the betrayal. I didn't look back.